Hi Helen, excellent to be with you in the easyJet hangar. Really looking forward to talking to you today. Obviously you're very well known in the legal operations community, but I understand you actually started your career outside of legal, and I was wondering if you could just start by telling me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think I ever imagined that I would end up in any way proximate to lawyers at any point in my journey to get here. So I started off with KPMG, and I kind of arrived there by accident because my degree is in French and German. I didn't get the A-levels that I needed. I pulled the plug out of the wall when I was doing one of the aptitude tests to get in, but I still managed to get into KPMG, and I spent 5 years doing audit there, 4 years doing operational restructuring and administration work and liquidation work, and did my MBA alongside that. So I didn't do accountancy. I did a load of accountancy training, but I never became an accountant. I did my MBA instead, and that was, for me, it was a brilliant insight into how loads and loads of different companies work, because 1 week you can be doing an audit for somebody like AstraZeneca, like a massive global pharmaceutical company, and another time you can be working with a tiny little owner-managed business that is really struggling to make ends meet and trying to work out how you can help them. So for me, it was a fantastic kind of broad experience that then gave me the opportunity to say, actually, helping businesses make change to become more effective is what I really enjoy. And so that's probably what started to narrow things down a little bit for me. I left KPMG after 9 years and went to Sellafield Limited. And Sellafield was actually a previous client of mine. And I arrived there to work on a massive programme of work. So it was about £1.7 billion, I think. It wasn't delivering quite what the government wanted it to. And so I was brought in as part of a leadership team to write a load of business cases, to kind of reshape the programme of work, to ensure that it was delivering all of the capabilities that needed to be delivered. And I kind of left that 2 years later. It was fully funded and it was ready to go. And what I kind of learned from that, and what I've kind of taken through, is that you don't have to understand something to actually make it better. Because I know nothing about nuclear decommissioning. I know very, very little about the intricacies of all of the projects that they were actually delivering. But what I do know about is how to write a flipping good business case and how to make sure that your programme is actually going to stack up and deliver the benefits that you want it to. Sellafield is a very, very long way from home for me. Home is in the northwest of England, and Sellafield is right on the very, very west coast of Cumbria. And you often run out of mobile phone signal up there, and I felt like I was a bit too far from Selfridges and Harvey Nichols, and I wanted to be back home. So I applied to the co-op.
This is the unexpected journey into legal ops.
This is the unexpected journey into legal ops, because at that point I was merrily applying for jobs thinking, I'll use all my finance skills and, I'll leverage all of, this stuff that I've done before. And at no point did I ever think legal is the answer to this kind of position I'm in. So I applied for a finance role, didn't get it because they recruited internally. And the recruiter said, oh, we'll keep your details, which they all say, and you just think, no way. And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, they called me and they said, we've got this role that sounds really interesting. And it's in legal, it's to be a business manager. I was literally just sat there thinking, why would you want me to do anything to do with legal? I'm the last person. So after kind of challenging it a bit, and they were like, no, I really think you need to come in and do this interview. I really think you need to come in to do this interview. And so I went in to do the interview. And I prepared so much. I'd done so much work. Unfortunately, what I prepared for was consumer-facing law, because the co-op has a consumer-facing legal business that does conveyancing and probate and a load of things that I still don't really understand, but I kind of knew all of these different parts of business that they did. And it turns out in-house teams are really different to consumer-facing teams. So I sort of sat in the interview and went, this isn't what I was expecting. This isn't, I didn't let it out like I did in some of my graduate interviews where I sat down and Deloitte, I think, said, so what interests you, Helen, in Deloitte tax? And I said, tax? And it was a little bit like that in this interview. It was a little bit like, so the in-house team. I was like, in-house team? What's an in-house team? But I got the job. And I think it's because I'm so different. I think differently. I don't do anything related to the law. I had literally no experience of the law that I think they felt would bring real value to that team and the way that it was being formed.
Yeah, and I guess on the topic of thinking differently and your kind of non-legal background, could you talk to me a little bit about how you've applied some of that, I guess, thinking? I know you do a lot of work around agile and continuous improvement. It'd be great just to understand how you've kind of approached legal operations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so many change management pieces that you can kind of bring in here. But one kind of consultancy approach that I found out very quickly doesn't work is the big idea. And I love a big idea. Like any consultancy, sell a big idea and we'll work out how we're going to get there. And I worked out very quickly that legal teams don't like that big idea. So what I've moved towards and what I've pivoted to is my experience of using the incremental gains and that kind of agile approach of let's just give something a try. Let's pick something small, let's tweak it, and let's see what happens and see how that improves the experience for the team. And that makes it sound like everything I do is technology. Most of the stuff that I do is not anything to do with technology. So it can be tweaking the the way that we organise our budgets and the way that we ensure that we've got transparency around recruitment. So it can be tiny little things that I change that make a difference for the team and give them a little bit of a test and see how it works. And that's really kind of drawing on change management, it's drawing on agile, it's kind of thinking about the user, thinking about how they are going to experience that change, but also thinking about how you can be quite nimble and not go with a big bang and then kind of deal with all of the fallout for that. But you get to the big bang eventually, and that's the exciting thing, is you just keep building all these little bits and then all of a sudden, without people noticing, the big bang's happened.
Absolutely. And so you started at the co-op and then you moved to easyJet, where we are today. Could you talk to me a little bit about your experience joining easyJet in a legal operations role?
Yeah, absolutely. So Micah joined easyJet in June 2019, I think it was. And one of the first things she did, so she tells me, was create a legal operations role. She'd had the role in place when she was at Royal Mail previously. And so for her, it was absolutely imperative that to bring about change within the team and also enable the team to be the best that they could be, this role needed to be in place. And so she created that role, and I heard about it through LinkedIn because isn't that where everybody hears about jobs nowadays? And the only downside that I could see to this role was that it was 3 hours commute away from home. And so I threw my hat in the ring and I joined in December 2019, and I've never really looked back because it continues to be that the only downside of being at easyJet is the distance from home. I love my job, I work with phenomenal people, I learn new stuff absolutely every single day. And no 2 days are the same, and Jamie, you'll know the pace here is phenomenal. In easyJet, a year at easyJet is like 3 years anywhere else, and I thought I'd experienced pace when I was in consultancy. So it's brilliant fun. But what I also get is latitude and a lot of opportunity to think about how things should be and think about how we can make a difference and think about some madcap ideas that, maybe don't make a lot of sense, but some of them work. And every now and again, one of them sticks. And that's one of the brilliant things about being part of easyJet, is that you get the opportunity to give all of those different things a bit of a try.
And one of the big things you looked at when you came to easyJet was how you were engaging with outside counsel. And I'd love it if you could just tell us a little bit about how you did approach that, and I guess some tips for other legal teams and professionals looking to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think our outside counsel approach historically was quite corporate and quite un-easyJet. And anybody who was going through one of those panel processes will know they are long, they are tedious, and the process itself doesn't always add value. It's the outcome that adds value rather than the process. And so I kind of went into it absolutely adamant that it was going to be a different approach. And that was the kind of the standpoint that I took. I made sure that from the very beginning, it sounded like an easyJet branded approach. So the tone of voice was shifted, the questions were shifted, everything was moved to make it align more closely with who we are. So that if companies didn't get that, if the law firms didn't get it, then they weren't going to be the right firms to be working with us from the outset. Obviously, the pandemic kind of put the kibosh on all of my timelines, which were so meticulously planned out. And so we ended up doing it all over Teams, which I think really gave us a great opportunity to think about how can we extract that real value from those interactions. So rather than falling into the trap of doing the beauty parade and listening to how amazing all of these law firms are, it was an opportunity for us to kind of take a step back and think, well, actually, what we want is to really see who these people are and how they are going to be to work with. So let's design a process that works around that. And I think that is probably one of my biggest tips. I think there's kind of, a few kind of tips that I can share that will add value to a community, a legal community or legal panel experience. But I think one of them is definitely around focusing on what you want to understand out of those interactions and what value you want to get out of those interactions. I think our legal community, we set out from the very beginning, we said it has to be a community that works together. So we share our strategy and we share who we are, we share org charts, we share updates from business, we have relationship managers within the team who share regular updates with our law firm partners and make sure that we are also meeting their expectations. So they've got the opportunity to come back to us if their bills aren't being paid, or if the scoping isn't right on things, or if they're not winning tenders, they can come and speak to us and find out what's going on. And so there's really open channels of communication. We're really ready to share information. And I think that's definitely something that I think makes an absolutely massive difference. And I think it's really important to not see them as the enemy. External law firms are really expensive and most businesses are going to be cost constrained now. easyJet's a low cost environment and we're about to get even more low cost because we're entering a recession. And I think that challenge makes you think that actually that relationship has to be quite adversarial, and it really doesn't, because it works best when it's a collaborative relationship.
Excellent tips. Final question. So you've done a lot around processes, but you've also done some work around technology, so making the legal team more efficient through use of technology. I'd just love to hear about your experience doing that, and particularly how you've made the most of the existing technology at easyJet. Yeah,
absolutely. So, there's a couple of things that we've done that I think have been a product of necessity. And that necessity is driven by a lack of capacity to really solve legal's problems, because there are, technology problems everywhere in every business, and legal falls quite low down the list of priorities. So one of the things that we've done is we have implemented Trello. We're looking at quite an agile way of working. I think it's quite different when I look at what other legal teams are doing and how other legal teams are managing their workflows. But for us, in a fast-paced environment, having those 10-minute stand-ups 3 times a week, quickly reprioritising your work, making sure that you can really see, what everybody's got on, really tracking that through, I think is really, really effective when you're trying to keep on top of a fast-paced job. It was a skill I learned in Sellafield, and I think it works absolutely brilliantly here. And I think I would love to take credit for having brought about Trello, but actually I thought about agile ways of working and Trello, and I didn't think that the team were quite ready for it. And Kate Sullivan, who is one of the heads of legal, actually came in and said, I think we should do this. And I was like, absolutely, I am more than happy to support you on that, because I think it's a brilliant way of working. And actually having that ambassador within the team made a huge difference. And the team have embraced it. It's going absolutely brilliantly. So I think there's a real opportunity there to leverage things that actually might not necessarily be the first thing you think of when you think about legal technology. Trello is not something that you would ever think of as a piece of legal technology, but there's no reason why you can't find creative ways to make it work. And obviously we've done something very similar to a lot of other organisations, and we've really started to leverage the value in the Microsoft Office suite, Microsoft 365, whatever it's called, in that suite of technologies, because I think there is so much untapped potential in there. It's already in. We don't have to fight with anybody to get it. Most of the tools are already enabled, said the person who's in a little bit of a battle to get a premium license. But I think it's, the vast majority of what you need to do, the real basics, is already there. So you can start building intake forms. You can do a little Power Automate to alert people, or to capture information into a Microsoft list, or to send an email. You can start to use some of these really foundational parts that are really straightforward to build, because I mean, my degree's in French and German. I don't know anything about this technology. Didn't even know how to plug in a laptop when I started at KPMG. So, there's absolutely no way that this is difficult stuff to use. And absolutely there are some really complicated, whizzy, amazing things that Site can do with it. But you don't need to be doing all of that to start to deliver some real value into the team. And then you can start to leverage that value to start to build the case for why you should be doing more and why you should be thinking about hiring somebody like Site.
Amazing. Thanks, Helen.
No problems. Thank you.